Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pro Football Historian channel. I'm your host, Flynn Given, and today we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks. We'll preview their offseason. Obviously, free agency just started, and we'll also discuss what happened in 2021. Obviously, big trade that they trade Russell Wilson to the Broncos, so there is a fresh start. But before we get into that, let's go each game by game and see how their season went. Obviously, disappointing season record-wise for the Seahawks since they've been a very successful team the last decade or so. Ever since they've had Russell Wilson as their starting quarterback, and they started off the season, beating the Colts. At the time, Wentz had the injury, and the Colts were dealing with a lot of stuff, and they had a bad start to the season. But Seattle came in there and they scored 21 really early, and they played fairly well on both sides of the ball. Wilson threw 4 touchdowns, only 5 incompletions. And Chris Carson even did decent work. He didn't have a lot of success this year, just injuries and other stuff. And Jonathan Taylor didn't have the start Jonathan Taylor, had for most of the year. So from that standpoint, they did pretty well. Seattle starting the season 1-0, then go and play an overtime game, which they pretty much blew. They were up, had their chances to really win this game, and ultimately went to overtime. And in overtime, they had their chance as well. And Titans were a good football team. Don't get me wrong, but this is a game Seattle. How the game played out should have won. I'm not saying on paper they were the better team, but they had their opportunities. Wilson, I thought, played decently well. There was times where the ending didn't go too well for Seattle, but with no running game really, Russell Wilson carried the team offensively, and defensively did okay until they just couldn't stop Henry. A lot of big runs, especially later in the game. And they lose an overtime game. 1-1, not a bad start against some decent football teams of the AFC South. They played Minnesota, playoff team the year before. Sorry, not the year before. Going into the season, you could see them being a playoff team, but ultimately they weren't. But the team they play, often in the Vikings, they lose this game. A team, Seattle usually wins against. And Kirk Cousins just, I guess you could say, outdueled Russell Wilson, however you want to put it. Kirk Cousins played really well against that defense. Russell Wilson had a decent game as well. Remember, he didn't have a pick until the Rams game, the game he got hurt. I think he had 10 touchdowns before he threw that first interception. And Carson had a pretty good game as well. But they had some running issues. Alexander Madison did most of the work. Dalvin Cook did not play, and the Vikings still won. So that wasn't great for the Seahawks. And defensively, you're looking at their team. They got good safeties. They obviously had Bobby Wagner at the time. Obviously, won't have him. But don't have a lot else defensively. Their scheme, a lot of zone and stuff. It's not as cover 3 bases as it used to be, but they're trying to evolve with the times and with the players they have. Then they beat the San Francisco 49ers, who they struggled early on. And Seattle looked like the better team, and I think Garoppolo got hurt this game. Can't really remember. I guess he did. Trey Lance threw 2 touchdowns. You don't really remember that Lance came in and played pretty well in this game. And he played the game in Arizona, and he also started the game against Houston. But Seattle just had some run defense issues more than years past, and maybe that's because they lost a lineman that went to Kansas City. But again, Russell Wilson played decent. Didn't have a lot of success running the ball. This also might be the game Carson got hurt. Can't really remember, but either way, they win this game. They hold on to the lead. Then they play the Rams. Basically where the season really changes. And they obviously could have won this game. Jalen Smith played pretty well, honestly. But the Rams came out and win. They didn't even play well themselves. Stafford had a really bad interception that he threw to Diggs in the end zone, I remember. And Geno Smith's stats don't look impressive, but he played pretty well. The interception was late, and I don't think it was even his fault from memory. Again, yeah, Carson didn't play, so that must have been he got hurt the week before. And they had no run game to speak of. Geno Smith carried them as much as he could. But this is where the season changes. No Russell Wilson. They didn't play Pittsburgh. Game they could have won. Honestly, they ran the ball really well in the game, especially late in the third quarter, I believe, maybe even fourth. But the fumble Geno Smith had, Watt forced it. Also, not a bad game. The Seahawks didn't have a lot of offense for most of the game. If I remember correctly, the first half just did not go well. But Pittsburgh allowed them back in the game. They couldn't do anything themselves. And it was a close game. A game again they could have won. They didn't. A lot of close games, Seattle. And that's usually how they play, honestly. They try to run the ball, play defense. And then Russell Wilson, they let them bail them out or come back, whatever they need for the game. But they didn't have Russell Wilson. Then they play the Saints. Night game, they only scored a touchdown like on the first drive, maybe the first play. I remember 84-yard touchdown to DK Metcalf. But other than that, they didn't do much. Couldn't do much. Again, Saints good defense. And Seattle's defense played pretty well. I mean, maybe you could say the Saints couldn't scare them or couldn't produce much. But again, another close game they lose. They then play Jacksonville. They dominate this game. The 7 points, I'm pretty sure, was really late in the game. I don't like how it keeps doing that. Probably seen that in other videos, but either way, game they dominate. Jags score very late, I remember. 149. And even after that, I guess they had the kickoff return on the onside kick. I don't remember that, but that's must what happened. And dominate a team they should. Lawrence threw a ton because they couldn't run the ball. So from that standpoint, they played better against the run. They just played, ball control, defense, and Jacksonville couldn't do much. Had the bye week. Wilson then comes back, and then he has his first shutout loss of his career against the Packers. And Rodgers come back off COVID. Both quarterbacks didn't play too great. I think Rodgers just had the bad reception. He didn't play too bad. He got some rushing touchdown from A.J. Dillon. And Russ Wilson had the interception in the end zone. He also had another interception. It was not great. He had more interceptions in this game than he had for the first 5 weeks of the season. And Wilson, there was a trend. He just wasn't really fully himself. They played the Cardinals. I think Cole McCoy played this game, if I remember. Once he loads, I don't know what's going on. But again, Cole McCoy plays, and they just couldn't stop Arizona, really. This is a game they should have won, or on paper had a potential of winning, even though Arizona was really good at this point. And see how season was trending downward. A lot of screen passes. They just couldn't stop Arizona's offense, really. And run defensively, they played fairly well, so that's better. But I remember a lot of short passes, screens. I'm just trying to look. Benjamin, 5 catches. Connor at 8. Oh, his targets, sorry. 7 catches in total. And had a long of 17. And James Conner a touchdown, so that was off a pass. So, again, Russ Wilson didn't play well. He played Washington. Game they lost. Russ Wilson tried to lead them back. Did throw a touchdown, but did not get the 2-point conversion. And ultimately, it was the end of the season. But basically loses a game, 3-8. Pretty much eliminated at this point. And then if they win every game out from this point, they would have a winning season and kept that streak. But you'll see that didn't happen if you didn't already know. And I guess this one looked more like himself end of the game, but was ugly again for the most part. And they play the 49ers. They win this game. This is shocking because the 49ers won BC won almost every game besides this one. This is a lot of turnovers both ways, a lot of mistakes. See how he came out with that fake punt touchdown. George Kittle, I'm pretty sure, had a good game. Adrian Peterson, one of maybe his last touchdown of his career, I think, in this game. Started to get Penny involved. He started to get healthy. Wilson played pretty well, honestly. But I remember they had if I remember correctly, I think Everett had those big fumbles. Kept 49ers in the game, and then they had the goal line stop on fourth down. They then play Houston, which I'll get to. They dominate that game 33-13. Another bad football team. They dominate like the Jags. No, not much to go on here, but Russell Wilson, I think 5 touchdowns. Sorry, not. This is not the 5 touchdown game, but really good. This is Penny's breakout game. 2 touchdowns, long runs. Texans really couldn't do anything right. Davis Mills did play okay, though. Either way, win for them. Then play the Rams. The season was alive at this point, but the Rams, they win the game. They played the better game. And remember with DJ Dallas, had an opportunity, just couldn't connect, and ends the season. The Rams ultimately go to the Super Bowl and win the division. And, it wasn't great from Russell Wilson. Then they play the Bears, a team they probably shouldn't have lost to, but they did. Nick Foles only started the year and pulls off a victory. Foles plays pretty well. Game, Seahawks had control again. They just blew it, didn't score a point in the fourth quarter. And just another game, they had opportunities to win. So I'm not saying this team was a talented team, but the season could have went multiple different directions. Ultimately, they obviously went 6, 7, and 10. This is the 5 touchdown game. They dominated the Lions, another bad football team. Who was playing better at this point, but picked off Boyle 3 times. 4 touchdowns for Russell Wilson, only 9 completions. And Penny had another big game. And then the last game of the year, they upset the Cardinals. Basically put them in the spot, if they win the Cardinals, they get the division, but because they lost, the Rams ultimately would lose. Put the 49ers in the playoffs, and Seattle would be out, the only team out of the division, not in the playoffs. And though they upset the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were playing the starters, so give credit to the Seahawks for again, great running game. Penny really showed he could be the starter. Now, do they sign him? Would expect him to keep him, but it took 4 years for Penny to be used like this. Russ Wilson played really good, but again, he's not on their team. I'm sure he's on the Broncos, like I said earlier. And we look at the season. Penny didn't play much. He had almost 800 yards. He played that well then. Collins, Carson even had a decent start. Just injury and all that throughout the season. And if you look at the stats, Russell Wilson didn't play bad. Throwing 25 touchdowns with all those awful games and games they didn't win. The stat line was pretty good, even though it wasn't a great season for Russell Wilson. And Geno Smith, the interception wasn't really his fault. He played fairly well. And will he be back in Seattle? We'll see. Obviously, they got Drew Lock. He signed Geno Smith. They want to keep that battle, and they'll probably draft someone. So, and obviously, they don't have Bobby Wagner. They're signing a bunch of their own guys and trying to keep them, like Will Dissly and their safeties. Let's go to the draft. They were 10. They gave that pick. That's Jamal Adams' trade, so they do not have the 10th pick, but they got the 9th pick from the Broncos. So in this draft, this mock draft, they're picking Malik Willis. If he's there, I wouldn't be surprised. He's probably the highest a quarterback would go, would be the Seahawks at 9. I guess they could happen, but if quarterback's going to get drafted anywhere in the top 10, it would be these picks. Otherwise, it would be outside the top 10. But Seattle's, rebuild really. At this point, I don't think they're going to Deshaun Watson or any of that stuff, or Matt Ryan or any of that supposed things going to happen. I think they're going to rebuild this team, and quarterback's likely the direction they're going to go. I don't got much else to say. Again, appreciate you for listening and watching, and have a great day.